Welcome, everybody. As you can see, I'm looking frighteningly like Andy Burnham up on there. That's for those of you in the UK who are following the latest political shenanigans. But I'm here to get the ball rolling, and I'm going to be requiring some audience participation shortly, so prepare yourselves for a quiz. Okay, first question for you in the room. Who is familiar with the Roman poet Horace? Hands up. Okay, a couple of people with a classical education, but like most of you in the room, I was not familiar with Horace. But according to the history books, he lived just over 2,000 years ago and was a friend of the Roman Emperor Augustus and the poet Virgil. Horace wrote about love, friendship, philosophy, and the fleeting nature of time. Okay, second question. Who is familiar with the film Dead Poets Society? Okay, a lot more hands. Me too. And one of the achievements of that particular movie is that it brought into the common modern consciousness the phrase carpe diem, which was first written by Horace, and which translates as pluck the day. But in the film and in popular culture, it's been interpreted as seize the day, to grab life by the horns, so to speak. And I think carpe diem is an apposite phrase right now, because the telecom sector is, I think, at a crossroads that requires it to be proactive beyond its traditional borders, outside of its comfort zone, and quickly. That gamble's been taken before, and the industry has the scars to prove it. But this time, I think it's imperative. Telcos need to evolve in order to remain as relevant to society as they have been up to now, and that requires decisive action, guts, determination, skill, experimentation, and of course, investment. Now, there's nothing in that list that isn't already in the day-to-day of this sector, but it just needs to be ramped up a few notches and within shorter timescales. And in my view, we are starting to see evidence of that happening. Of course, the catalyst for all of this is the new era of AI. And as Guy mentioned, AI is going to get a lot of references during the next couple of days. It's also been at the heart of many of our free-to-download editorial reports, our DSP leaders reports during the past year. And you can see a few of the titles here. Now, one of our most recent reports was the 26-page Telcos and AI report, which was based on the results of an industry survey that was completed by almost 260 people who work in the telecom sector. So ahead of our first panel session, which is focused on scaling AI deployments, I thought I'd share one of the many results from that survey. As you can see, we asked, should telcos be developing their own AI applications? And as you can see from the results, almost 2/3 of our respondents said yes. Now, I actually thought that it would be more than that. We also asked our respondents to share any thoughts that they had on the topic of telcos and AI. And here's an interesting one that was submitted. Everything was anonymous. And I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds to take a look at this and take it in. Because there's an interesting phrase in there. Proof of concept purgatory, and that's food for thought ahead of our first panel. But before we get there, and to go back to Horace, here's a couple more Latin phrases that I think are becoming more and more relevant in these AI-centric days. Caveat emptor, let the buyer beware, and cui bono, who benefits. But enough about Bono, because later on we'll be talking about the edge. I'm sorry to say I am here all week, but that's the only lined up gag you'll be getting. So With that, it's now time for our first panel session. So could the panelists please join me on the stage, and please give them a big round of applause as they do so. So our first session is on scaling AI deployments. Now, telecom operators are overwhelmed with AI pilots, but they lack business transformation. And despite numerous AI-based network optimization, customer service, and operations trials, measurable value remains far too low. And the industry must transition from experimental AI to production scale transformation to re-architect network operations and enable profitable new services. So to discuss all of this, let's meet our panelists. I'm going to ask them to briefly introduce themselves, starting at our far left.
Thank you. My name is Ohad Barnoy. I lead GenAI and data solutions for Amdocs, working with all our global customers.
Okay, excellent. Welcome.
I'm Ahmed Hafez. I'm leading strategy in group technology and also leading AI networks in Deutsche Telekom.
Amol Phadke, Chief Transformation Officer at Tech Mahindra.
Okay, and our co-host for this session is Philippe, and Philippe is going to introduce himself from the podium as he gives our opening DSP leaders address. Philippe.
Okay, so predictive maintenance, root cause analysis, next best heroes, RAN optimization, network tuning. I think that we have all a lot of POCs, exploration, project, and sometimes we have also real deployment cases. Perhaps what is missing the most is what we are calling the measurable outcomes. For me, the question today is not if the technology will make happen our AI transformation, because of course it will manage the topic. My question is much more basically how we will really scale it. The question for me today is really about the scale. My name is Philippe Ensarguet. I'm Orange Fellow and VP Cloud and Software Engineering at Orange. And with my team, we are basically working at the crossroads of network, of intelligence artificial, and the cloud and the automation. And my honest take, basically on my first words, are very simple. I think that today the most important production gap that we have is absolutely not technical. It's absolutely, for me, organizational and structural. Today, basically, if we are doing the math, we have the compute power, we have the models, we have the algorithm, and even sometimes we have clean data from time to time. What is really missing today is, I would say, the organizational wiring. It's about the operating models. It's about the ability to blend the team, to have people that are very knowledgeable on the business side and having the ones who are able to manage all those deployments. According to me, if we want to target production-grade AI, we need 3 core components. The first one is about clean data. The second one is about programmable infrastructure. And the last one is AI output connected with the real decision and to also the real owner. Most of the case, when I'm talking with my peers, I think that at least one ingredient related to the 3 that I introduced is missing. Today, I think that with this first session and this first panel, we are really talking about the hard stuff. We will explore and we will talk about the barriers, about the architecture patterns. We will talk about operational model, and we will also talk about how we can communicate the value to our executive and to our partners. So basically, I'm really keen to join and come back sitting with my peers and starting the panel.
Okay, round of applause for Philippe. Okay, fantastic. Okay, great start to our opening panel. So let's open this up to the rest of the speakers to find out what the specific organizational, technical, and cultural barriers still exist that prevent successful pilots from becoming operational. Ahmed, if we start with you.
Right, so there are things that are common between AI and non-AI. So if you start a proof of concept, every one of us knows that it's very easy to do a proof of concept. Much easier, no constraints, no integration, no demands, no security checks. All that stuff can be done much easier. So by nature of what a proof of concept is, or a pilot is, it's very easy to be done. But we always recognize a huge gap in order to go into production. I mean, this gap is actually not only to get things done properly, but you have all the, let's say, the hard lines that you have to pass from security, from Works Council approvals, from regulatory, a lot of stuff that you have to go through. So if you are not planning that you would go through the whole process and the proof of concept is just a step, you will fail at the proof of concept. Because the hurdle, or I call it the gate, so the gate of accepting the result and also going into production is a huge gate. So that is not AI specific, to be honest. That's in general. But if you go to the AI, I would just pick two things and then just maybe for the discussion. The first one is the return on investment of what you are going to put in. So you come and say, what is the business value? And here you compare usually the delta. I mean, we are all not there waiting for AI to come and everything was done manually. No, there is a lot of automation already happening in place. There is a lot of stuff that have happened, maybe with script, with other ways, but the fact that we're not starting from scratch. So you always say, okay, is there enough delta? Is the effort worth the value that I get back? And you get into these conversations, get stuck sometimes. The other part is the trust, is that the second one. And the trust is pretty huge because even if we talk about AI and how can we make AI more reliable and so on, we are actually transitioning from deterministic automation to probabilistic automation. That's a big transition. And many people, rightly so, are skeptic about it. Employees are not only accepting it easily unless they see real value. So these are not easy hurdles to do. So at least these are the two specifics I'll take for AI, but there is a general one, as I was saying in the beginning.
Okay. Ohad, do you come across this skepticism in your dealings with the operators?
So it's very interesting because we don't do POCs. We don't believe in POCs, and I'll explain what that means. A POC by premise is I want to validate that this works. What we believe in is what we call pilot to production, where the concept is different both technology-wise and what you're trying to evaluate. You're evaluating three things. One, does the solution actually work? Technically, does it work as it's expected to work? Number two, does it work in my complex environment? Okay, Deutsche Telekom environment is very different than Orange technical environment and cultural environment. Does it work in my environment? And does it bring a business value? And those are the three measurements that we put into a pilot to production. The reason we believe in pilot to production more than a POC, because it takes the same time. It takes today 4 to 6 weeks at most to do a pilot where I'm integrating with the underlying systems, where I'm actually showing that the solution can work, and I'm measuring a KPI of success. And just like Ahmed said, if the discussion needs to be about, okay, let's assume for a second, you're skeptical, excellent. Let's assume for a second this will work. Let's assume for a second there is an ROI behind it. Do you have the path to get this into production? And it's just like Ahmed said, you need to make sure that the path is understood before you start this theoretical POCs. Telecom companies are bombarded with POCs from every possible vendor, technology. I'm sure they hear 20 times a day, I have this amazing technology, let's POC it, let's try it. I'm saying don't waste time on another POC that works in a lab environment that shows you something cool. Try it in your environment, it'll take you the same amount of time, and you'll actually be able to make smart decisions about where to take it forward. This will also drive a cultural change. If people think that way, that a POC is not in order to, I don't believe it, but let's let them try to prove it to me, but actually I have stakes in the game, I'm going to connect it to my systems, I'm going to see that it works. It's going to drive a cultural change where people feel ownership of showing that this is successful and this can actually drive value.
Okay. Amol, you've been on both sides of the fence in the past couple of years, so you have lots of experience, and I know you're doing a lot of work right now on these kind of things with operators.
I think it's quite interesting if you look at pilots, as Ohad said. I can almost guarantee that the first set of pilots done by any operator are hugely successful. I have not seen anybody saying the first pilot on AI failed miserably. And there is a reason for that, right? Because whenever you start doing a pilot, you want to create the momentum in the organization for you to then cascade success. But the big impediment in terms of your original question on how do we then move to production and scale, I still believe there is a huge talent gap. Because the first pilot always has your best people on it. That's how you do it to guarantee higher probability of success. And so your best data scientists, your best network engineers, your best IT engineers are going to work together for the first 2 or 3 pilots. Then when you go into the wider organization and say, now I want to do 1,000 of these across 100,000 people, you suddenly get into this issue of a sort of step down in terms of understanding what needs to be done, how it would need to be done. So I do feel the industry hasn't focused on massive talent upskilling programs that would be needed to get us to the point where everybody could scale at the same time. Otherwise, it's going to be a sequential thing, which I've observed, which will just add more delays in the production. So that is one thing that we just have to not gloss over.
Okay. Well, that's a good point to come to Philippe, because I know, having spoken to a number of executives from Orange in the past year, there's been a really big focus on upskilling, I think, within the organization. Is that right?
Yes, totally right. And Ray, if I remember your question, you talk about barriers.
Yeah.
And from my standpoint, I think you highlight three things. You talk about the business, the technology, and the culture. According to me, and from what I'm observing, I would say from the business focus, I think that our telecom industry is heavily, I would say, tech push. We are really pushed by technology and by vendors. And most of the time when you are walking in the alley of any kind of event, people are not selling solution, they are selling technology. So I think if we want to miss the AI things, the first on the business is really to focus on the value that we generate on the business case before starting whatever. The second topic on technology, because the question is related to the scale. When you are a multi-country telecom operators, it's very, very hard on the field of the trenches to align everyone on Earth. So here, you really need to make a wise decision around what I'm calling the blueprint, the AI blueprint, where you identify the big blocks, the big patterns that are non-negotiable if you want to scale your business cases. And the last point that is very related to your point and your remarks, Ray, about the upskilling. I think it's extremely important from the culture standpoint to train and to get people their hands dirty with the topic of AI. Because honestly, when I'm talking with some of my peers, most of the time, I have the feeling that they are talking to me about AGI. It's something that could do absolutely everything, that can solve almost all our problems. But the reality is quite different. We need to understand when we need to use machine learning, traditional AI, generative AI, or agentic. We really need to focus and to train and get our people educated. And it will be the opportunity to blend the team from the business expert, the technology expert, and the transformation expert that need to be successful in the scaling exercise in which we need to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to look to the future, but we have to deal with the now, right now. As is mentioned a lot in conversations around AI, data, very important. You mentioned that as well. So let's shift a little bit to the technology that underpins what's going on at the operators and look at what kind of critical infrastructure, operating models, and data architectures are needed to move from the fragmented pilots to enterprise-wide AI deployments at real scale. What is required to underpin? Let's start with you, Amol, about what you're seeing out there at the moment.
I think the operating model point that you mentioned is quite critical, because we have seen a number of different data models being tried out. You have the sort of centralized data model where you'll have a common data warehouse managed centrally at a group level, and then use cases are driven out of that sort of common data warehouse. The challenge with that model tends to be that obviously individual data silos still exist. You made the point earlier about the silos in the sort of countries, and then that creates the issue of fragmentation that we are trying to solve. Now, the other way, which is allowing a complete distributed data model, also creates an issue, because then you get so many duplications and variants of a data lake that it becomes almost impossible to do the org-wide scaling. So I do feel a federated data model, which is something what I also had the fortune of working for hyperscalers, as you know, and they have a huge sort of advantage because they always had the federated data model in their mind, which is any time I want to build a software, let's take Chrome or any other piece of carrier grade software that they build, they will have a centralized data model with some governance, and then individual teams would federate it out to create use cases within the guardrails. Right? So I do think a federated data model would be very critical in terms of achieving that scale. Otherwise, that fragmentation will impede any real progress.
Okay. Ahmed, what's been the approach at Deutsche Telekom? I mean, this is something that the industry has been talking about for decades now, sorting out data management, cleaning up data, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So the approach we're taking, if you look at AI, the success of AI, which is also even scaling different things is different than scaling AI. And I would explain that first, and then I would tell you what we're trying to do. So basically, scaling AI has a challenge that things are changing so fast that you see technology today, in a month from now, it could be obsolete. How you deal with something like that? We are used to put plans that traverse years, not months. So we're now transforming into being much more agile. So we do things on the go. And that's why I would say there are three cornerstones, in my opinion, for the success of AI. And this is what we're trying to do in Deutsche Telekom as well. We have the data element that we are trying to make sure that we have the right data, the right unified data. How do we do that? Clean up the data, make sure that we have the right data products, contracts, and so on. We have the enablers part. And the enablers part is not to be undermined. I mean, this is a huge story and usually not really looked at properly, because it's about, if you want to go into automation, agentic AI, you need a context and semantic layer. This context and semantic layer is actually very hard to buy. You cannot buy from a supplier. You have to build. And this makes things a lot more complex. And then you have the use cases, which is proving the value, because also organizations won't wait for you for a few years, then you got now the data right. And you will never get it 100%. You will always get it improved, adjusted. You change your, even architecture, you can change architecture on the move to adapt. So we are working on the three in parallel and not trying to get stuck waiting for each one that we have the dependencies and then we build the pyramid and we take 10 years to do. So that's not going to work. So what we did is that you can do some use cases. You need the specific data. We get the data with the best possible architecture available to make sure that the use cases are proven and run. And then we are in parallel building the proper architecture for that, so that once this is available, we migrate the data, still the use case runs. And then the enablers. If I'm now solving the problem within the use case, now I want to take that out. So instead of making the agents talk to each other, now I will make them talk through an A to A server. Then instead of connecting to certain tools and data directly, I will connect with MCP. So you start adjusting your architecture, scaling it as you speak. If we wait until we build everything and then we build use cases, we will not go there, because no one will have the appetite to wait, and because there is no return on investment, direct return on investment on data and enablers. There is only when you have the implementation of a use case. So if you want to kill the use cases and kill the story, you would have to wait. Then waiting is not helping. So you need to work on the three in parallel. And this is what we're trying to do. And we have proven that this works. in multiple use cases that are up and running in the network, including agentic AI.
Okay. Ohad, are you seeing lots of different approaches to models and data management at different companies? Because like you mentioned, everybody's different, so you'd imagine that there'd be lots of different approaches.
So I think what's really interesting is the elephant in the room around data and BI before AI, okay, was that network never wanted to share data with IT. IT didn't want to share data with network. They said, tell me the insight that you want and I'll give it to you. Okay, you want to predict churn, I'll tell you what the network score is. I'm not going to give you the raw data of the customer experience on the network. This made sense pre-AI world. Today, that has to change. It's going to change. Because now, when I'm building a semantic layer, a context layer, ontology, and even exposing MCP servers to the data, I'm going to have to be able to expose that. Now, some of our customers, we build Amdocs, we build an ontology, context, and semantic layer on top of BSS OSS, because this is where we mainly play. Some of our customers are saying, can you expand this to a telco grade ontology? And we work with them to see whether it makes sense and there's any value in extrapolating it. But I think the most important thing is that people are realizing that as you start your talk to your data, whether it's through an agent, whether it's through a human, the ability to actually drive business outcomes is going to require that layer that Ahmed was talking about that has to be built. Some customers are very advanced. Vodafone Group, for example, already built an entire data lake that collects a lot of the data. I hope this is public, but already collects from the different. It is now from the different opcos and it allows them really to make advances there. On the other hand, I was in Singapore last week, and Singtel, and also in Manila, I was with other customers. They're taking a very, very different approach. By the way, they're taking, in some cases, a more siloed approach because they feel that that's the right way to approach AI in their domains. But they're all still looking for a semantic layer, context layer, the ability to actually have an agent access the data and as an agent to agent or agent to MCP. And again, in my view, that's going to bring a huge cultural change. We're going to have, if I'm head of a network for a telco, I'm going to have to be able to share a lot more, not just the insight of what my network score is for this customer or for this tower or for this region, but the AI transformation is going to shift a cultural transformation, which I think is going to help evolve and change the operating model. Okay.
I mean, we hear a lot in this industry about collaboration, but Philippe, I saw you nodding there about the bringing together the IT and the network teams. Are we seeing internal collaboration now as well as external collaboration?
I think that the collaboration are getting more and more real, and for multiple reasons. And because the question is always about the topic of scale. For me, there are at least 3 topics that are very, very important. You can't scale in AI faster than the weights of your legacy. I think it's super important. You can't be successful on AI if you are not successful on automation. You can't be successful on automation if you're not successful on data. You can't be successful on data if you're not successful on infrastructure. One thing that could turn very bad for me is thinking that AI is a new feature. It's not a new feature, it's a new layer. And it's not something that we can build up, I would say, apart. It's a new layer that needs to live inside what is existing. So according to me, being an AI native telco company is impossible if you are not already successful on the cloud native telco transformation, because it's the substrate that we need to make the transformation. And you know that I'm strongly implied in the Silva project, and we released a few weeks back right now a very comprehensive white paper when we advocate how much we think that the Silva project could be a perfect substrate to make the AI and bring the AI layer on the part where we have certainly our most sensitive network function that are living. So it's the first point. The second point is that with AI, we won't be in a greenfield environment. The real life is that we are brownfield. And you know, we have all the layer of our historical and the vendor relationship. So it means that You can pretend to have an operating model that is working for the brownfield that will be different for working for the greenfield. If you want to keep the coherency on part of your infrastructure and network where you will have legacy running and AI new thing, you can't have a disconnected operating model on both. So it means that at a moment in time, you need to keep this coherency. And the last point, and Ahmed, you mentioned point that for me are very, very, very important. On the scaling, on the question of the scaling, there are at least a corporate-wise topic that need to be tackled, otherwise the scaling is impossible. The first one is about the security. If you're not able to bring the authentication, the authorization, and the accountability, you can't scale. You need to have an end-to-end observability stack, and the observability of the infrastructure, the network workload, but also the AI, and you need to have this on all the layers. You have also another one that is very important, and you mentioned in your report, it's about the guardrail and the policy that is making what will be possible in my network with what I want to do with the AI. And I think so, yes, the security, the observability, the inference isolation, the guardrail, the policy, and there are certainly many more. But for me, those ones are absolutely critical to be thought as enterprise-wide asset. And it's one more time for me to say that we can't be successful building an AI stack apart. It's necessarily something that is built up on something existing. Otherwise, we will build a new silo, and I think that we have enough silos in our telco ecosystem.
Okay. Fantastic. Now, we're going to come on now to the business angle, because obviously, this is important in everything we talk about. But as Guy mentioned at the beginning, we are going to try and get some audience interaction here. So if you have a question, get ready to put your hand up for our roving mic in just a minute, and then we'll come. But first, I want to come to this topic of how we measure and communicate AI's impact on revenue enablement, on service velocity, and on customer experience, because there have to be proof points, right? There have to be ways to measure this. So, Ahmed, is there any kind of guide, blueprint, scale that the industry can look at to see how well they are doing in terms of AI implementation?
Right. So yeah, of course there are lots of KPIs that could be used. Maybe let's go into category first. So there are 3 categories of value that you can read from AI. Of course, you can categorize further, but at least the 3 big ones are customer impact. Whatever the customer impact is, you have KPIs like customer experience index you can define, and you can get from direct network KPIs and understand on an individual customer basis what type of experience they're getting. You have the NPS score, you have the churn numbers, you have the uptake in certain services if your use case is addressing that, or it's expanding or something, or advertising a service, that you can measure. That's the customer, that's number 1. The second one is efficiencies. I mean, this is very easy and usually the one that we look at first. Although, honestly, I think it should be the last one we look at, because we rush into trying to find out that can AI reduce our costs, OPEX, CAPEX, FTEs, and all that, all these elements. But we usually rush so fast into that, so we even cut before we have the AI in place. But that's where the danger comes. But the third one is, in my opinion, is also one of the most important one, is technology excellence. And what do I mean by that? So it mean time to detect a failure, mean time to find the root cause analysis, mean time to resolve a problem, number of instances you get through. You can actually, with AI, reduce significantly the number of instances. How many night shifts do you have to do? These kind of KPIs is giving you excellence, but the excellence is resultant into a more resilient network, a more reliable network, and of course, that's a better customer experience. The reason it's not just under customer, because there is an excellence part that you also reduce the impact on your people. You also reduce, of course, this will result in some gains efficiency-wise. But actually how you run your team, how you run your networks, how your network becomes more reliable, you would realize that what you could actually, we realized in some use cases that we could do roughly 40 to 100 times more in certain aspects. These are not structurally possible. So you would find with AI, it's not about the margin you create, it's about the pie you enlarge. You are enlarging the pie of abilities that you have. Maybe maybe you need in some cases to hire more people to run this AI, to run the network, and to run things. But definitely your pie is growing, meaning your capabilities, maybe your revenues, maybe what you can do, what you can deliver to the market. So time to market is also a crucial element there. So what we need, and sometimes we need to do something that takes us 6 months. Now with AI, it can take us 6 hours. When you look into this kind of analogy, you would understand, okay, that can have a strong business impact. All this is measurables. These are measurable things. And what we do is that every use case address some of these. We need to highlight that in the very beginning. Assume success, what is the outcome? And then we put that. So our aspiration is to get that outcome. We work towards that and we measure. Did we get that outcome? Better or worse? Is it now passing that threshold? So we could be also ambitious, but is it passing a threshold of value? Then it's kept. Otherwise, then what's the problem? We go back and see the better solution.
Okay. Amol, are you seeing any quantifiable measurements in the industry now that can help to assuage fears that this might be money going down the drain, which I'm sure some people might think?
I think Ahmed made a great point in terms of the fact that the industry is obsessed on efficiency. And that's just a phenomenon that we see across the industry, where we look at AI as giving us a huge TCO benefit, when in reality it is actually service velocity that would really drive the AI scaling. Because I do think the ability to launch products faster, to launch features faster, has been the biggest issue for the industry for many decades in terms of taking months as opposed to days. And Ahmed also mentioned the MTTR issue. So these are the kind of things, if you can really move to seconds and minutes and maximum hours for service velocity, I do believe putting that steel thread of using agentic and AI to drive better outcomes from a product development, service development, feature velocity, that is what we should focus on, because I think the rest are consequences of doing that. But we sort of are going it the other way around at the moment, which we need to pivot to.
Okay. Ohad, are you seeing time scales change? Are you seeing strategies change as a result of early implementations and early experiences?
So I think, like from an Amdocs standpoint, a year ago, when we realized we need to do a cultural change, we actually established a new division for data and AI, collected everybody in the organization that works with data and AI under one roof, product delivery, R&D, operations, and so on, to drive that cultural change that can actually drive to those KPIs. And I remember our first KPI, because we needed to define a KPI, was the simplest one, adoption. Okay, it's very easy to measure how many people are actually using AI tools and so on. Very, very quickly, we started adding more and more KPIs. Now, we're not focused as much on, to both my colleagues' point about operational efficiency, we weren't looking at that to begin with. Okay, we were actually looking at how we improve velocity, how we make sure that as a software company, our software reaches our customers faster. We're able to deliver more story points per sprint than we were before, a lot less defects and so on. I think a lot of our customers are also software houses of their own and should also look at that aspect. I agree that the KPIs around, can I predict a outage 24 hours before it happens and a 95% probability is a game changer with AI, because even with ML, we weren't able to really reach that. And those are very important, but I think we also need to look at the very, very basic things. How am I actually measuring the KPIs of my people leveraging AI in their day-to-day? Because at the end of the day, I'm hoping that AI doesn't end up, replacing everybody, but it works side by side with us. I'm hoping and believe work side by side with us to make us a lot more efficient towards those outcomes that we're talking about. A better customer experience, increased revenue, reduced cost overall, but working together with us. So I think the focus for us is about how do we make sure that our employee experience is good with AI, that they don't have to look for tools. We find the tools for them before they even ask for it. okay? So I don't have people running and saying, can I have a license for Cursor, right? We make all those available because we want to make sure that the people can be efficient with AI and not see AI as a threat. And for us, those are the KPIs. And I think it applies also to a lot of the telcos that are also techcos that have big software development shops that should look also on those aspects.
Okay. And Philippe, what kind of targets, what is the Orange CFO expecting, or the board, in terms of what do they want to see?
I think it's a great question. I may answer with one word. It's a question of maturity, because we did not scratch the surface on the maturity topic. We are here on an AI panel, and okay, GenAI is 3 years, agentic is almost 1 year, and we are here talking about potential outcome and benefits like technology we deploy decades back. So I think that we must be very cautious about the maturity topic. And that's the reason why I'm perfectly aligned with what you mentioned, Ahmed, about the families or the areas where we may have benefits. And we have basically 2 pockets. The pockets of what we have, and it's the efficiency, and the pockets of what we could have. It's basically the customer value and the revenue generation. On the efficiency part, we know that we got a threshold, but at the end of the day, it's where we could have the first major tangible result. And that's why when you talk about mean time to detect, mean time to repair, time to value, I think that it's indicators and KPI that are much more rooted into what we used to do. And perhaps it's also a question to accept to dissociate the team that we want to have working on the efficiency topic and the ones about value generation and customer and customer focus, because the angle for me are absolutely not the same, even if they can share part of the technology stack, but they are different.
Okay, excellent. So I did promise we would come to the room. I'm going to have to rely on my colleagues to see the hands because, Tony's got the mic. Tony, if you can find a hand that's up, and whoever's got the microphone, if you could say your name and a short question and who you're asking the question of.
Neil McRae from City Fibre. So it's actually more of a general question for the whole panel. One of the things you've missed out is the actual journeys in a telco and how inefficient they are. And actually, you don't need to build any AI systems. You can use AI to do task and process investigations, and you'll win there more than you'll win on any other systems. And I just wonder, you didn't mention that kind of using AI to rewire your business. And I kind of just wonder where your thinking of that is. It was all very much, hey, we need to build stuff, we need to develop stuff. Actually, I predict in every single company, there's about 50 apps where there's an AI button you could press and immediately start seeing benefits.
Okay. Is AI rewiring your business? Ahmed?
Of course. I mean, it's a very good point. This wasn't on the question list, so we didn't discuss it. But yes, indeed. I mean, it's the difference between effectiveness and efficiency. I mean, sometimes we have to look into the process and redo the process once again. And we had that in fiber, for example, in Fiber Factory. So what we're building in Germany, we had to put a lot of AI. But when you come to put AI, you would have to look into the process. What's going on? Is this the right approach? Is AI transforming that process and maybe bypassing steps that we don't need anymore? And the fact is, yes, indeed. In many cases, it's transforming the way you approach things, not only taking humans from some aspects, but it's completely taking sometimes some steps from these aspects. So indeed, yes. I mean, just the short answer, yes, it is.
And low risk, yes.
Oh, sorry. I mean, the lights and my eyes can't see so high. Thanks, Loris.
Any more quick responses to Neil's question?
I just want to, I think this is one of the unique capabilities that AI brings, because Ahmed mentioned before the deterministic automation, which is what we had until now, which a lot of us are still using. And this is where we would take a process and automate it with RPA or whatever, and usually it would be the same process we would automate. This is exactly where, with AI, we can come and rewrite and rewire our business processes and our technical processes without having to determine the deterministic branch and say ahead of time what we think is going to be the step-by-step process, both for us and our customers, by the way.
Okay.
I want to bounce on this one because outside AI on a very predictive world, when you're taking a process and when you have multiple partners that are basically part of implementing the process, even in a very predictive way, honestly, today is still a mess. And it's a question of who is responsible and accountable of what. And most of the time, it's hell of time doing validation, qualification, and it's totally not aligned with the speed at which we need to move. And it's with what is, I would say, in our legacy. If we turn this into AI, honestly, guys, I'm very, very curious to see how we will make a cross-vendors agentic AI integration if we don't change the mindset, the way we want to implement the guardrails, the policy. So I think that it's very linked back to what we mentioned about the reality of the operating and the operational model. I think that we only scratch this surface. Honestly, it's a lot of time today to do validation of network function and part of the process we need to automate. I'm very curious to see what it will be in 5 years from now when we will turn more agentic and who will accept to take the risk of what in something that is not predictive.
Okay. Now, we have 90 seconds left, basically. So I just want to very quickly touch and ask Ahmed and yourself, Philippe, about if you can tell us any key AI initiatives that are in play right now at your companies that you believe could transform your network operations in the next 6 to 12 months?
We have an initiative, we call it Minder, or multi-agentic intelligent network remediation. So it's detection and remediation. So the idea is a multi-agentic layers that would actually take the network to a completely different level of autonomy using agentic AI. This is a very big initiative we have, and we're trying to, it's under development, so we are working very actively on it to bring that to life. It has a lot of challenges in, but we're learning and we're trying to develop that. If this happens, that we are getting to level 4+ into automation, which means that the observability and incident management are all managed by AI in certain domains, of course, to the domains that we will implement with the strand and transport, then other domains. That's the idea.
Okay.
We can't be successful in our AI transformation without successful on automation, because otherwise we won't be able to trigger back or to manage the closed loop. So I strongly agree with your point, Ahmed, about the relation between the AI transformation and the automation. On our side, at Orange, we are driving an AI for network transformation program that is, I would say, multi-path. We have the business and starting with the value. We have the technological stack. We have the training, and we have the people empowerment. And today we highlight between 10 to 15 different business cases that we are working, I would say, the hard way in the trenches with our countries and affiliates. And I think that it's extremely important to spend as much time as we can in the field of the trenches, listening to the real pain and the real need where we need to bring real solution. And perhaps it's where we should measure our first benefits and outcome to make the deployment and to envisage the scale.
Okay, excellent. Well, I mean, the fleeting nature of time mentioned earlier, how quickly did that go? That was amazing. So let's give a round of applause to our first panel. Thank you so much, gentlemen.